Welcome everybody to Rising Stars. This is, I go on about this, but it's just a wonderful session. It's really high energy. Obviously with the technical issues, we might be a bit choppy, but really this is if you think about it like a postcard from each of our social enterprises to just give you a snapshot. They will all be able to share links with you in the chat or afterwards to their websites and to give you more information. But really they've got a very hard task. I'm sure if I asked any of you to talk about your social enterprise in 5 minutes, you would kick me, but that's exactly the challenge that these guys have got. We will hopefully have time for a few questions at the end, but remember that on the right hand side where you've got your chat box, there's two other options. One is for polls and one is for people. If you go into that people tab, you'll be able to see all of our speakers and actually all of the delegates here, and you can send them a message and you can follow up with them afterwards. So if you've got any business opportunities for these guys or any partnerships, or you want to buy something from them or whatever it might be, or you want to put them in touch with someone, then you can do that through the people tab. So our first speaker is Chris, I believe. Chris, are you happy and ready to go, Chris?
I don't think he can hear.
Okay, that's not ideal. Chris, can you hear me? Lucky you. Right. What I'm going to do is pass that on to Joe, who is looking after this at the backstage, and then just move things about a wee bit. Molly, are you happy to go first? Can you hear and see and everything like that? Molly, yeah, happy?
I can hear and see.
Perfect. Right. Okay, so I'm just going to keep right that you are going first so I can keep track, and you're ready, steady. You can start now, okay? I know all the other speakers, if you could just mute your microphone just so we don't have any feedback, that would be ideal. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Molly McGregor, and I'm a sport team leader at Achievement Bute, which is a children's charity on the Isle of Bute. And we moved all of our service online, so we felt it was fitting to make a short film for you all to tell you a little bit about us, our response to the lockdown, and to show you some examples. So I'm going to hopefully share my screen now and show you all. Share. And that should be up now. Yeah.
It's certainly something started. So hopefully the double click is working now. If you double click on that, you'll hopefully see it a bit bigger.
Am I okay to start the video? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep. Perfect. I'll press play.
Achievement Bute is a voluntary organisation that's been working with children and young people on the Isle of Bute for the past 22 years. We started as a group of parents of children with disabilities who wanted our children to get whatever support they needed to do what every child wants.
Which is to have fun, to meet friends, to learn and to be valued.
Our focus is on inclusion, and so we offer a wide range of good things to do for all children on Bute.
Then in March 2020, just as Achievement Bute was getting ready for a packed programme for children's activities, guess what happened? Coronavirus struck the world!
Was that the end of Achievement Bute's activities?
No, it was not. We just moved everything online.
And that's where I came in. I'd been planning to work on Achievement Bute's Easter drama project when the lockdown started. Our director quickly arranged a whole staff meeting using Zoom. We then came up with ideas with the aim of keeping children connected in our community by providing useful, interesting online activities. It was only when I was preparing this presentation that I realised exactly how much we'd done, and there simply isn't enough time in a 3-minute film to tell you how we did it all. So I'm going to focus on just a couple of examples. One of our first projects was our Great Butish Bake Off. 2 of us devised a weekly show with a different baking challenge each week for children to try at home. We researched recipes and filmed ourselves baking. I then collated all the clips into a 5-minute show which we posted online. This was very popular and ran for 10 weeks. And at the end, we gave out badges to all participants and special prizes to our star bakers. We also provided individual online support for specific children and young people with disabilities such as Reese. We discussed with Reese's mum and we thought a weekly call would be enough.
He ended up having a chat with the staff twice a day. The difference was huge because Reese has a younger brother and it gave me some time to spend with him.
During our Zoom chats with Reese, he really likes to take us a wander around his house and garden.
I got new plants last week.
One of the other things I had been working on during the lockdown was producing a short news video made by children on the island. We had created ABC News and decided to give Reese's Garden a regular slot on the show. Lots of children took part in the show. They chose the content, and with a bit of technical support, they filmed themselves at home and sent their clips in via WhatsApp for me to edit.
This gave us children a chance to report on things that are happening around the island that are important to us.
I was the weather reporter for ABC News. We had to be extremely creative. Didn't have a real weather map, so I decided to turn my pool table into a green screen.
We many reporters even managed to get a couple of politicians as the living too. You once described Jacob Rees-Mogg as a decent sort. Seriously, Brendan, how can you say that?
The reason I called him that was because I made my maiden speech.
We hope this has given you a bit of inspiration and shown you how imagination, collaboration, and just a smidgen of technical know-how can help children stay connected, engaged, and most importantly, happy, even during a pandemic.
Give a big thumbs up to Achievement Bute.
I think that what Achievement Bute have done for all the children during lockdown was amazing, and I'd just like to say a big thank you to them.
I would like to say thank you to Achievement Bute for keeping me busy during lockdown.
Thank you for my story. I loved it. Alexa, lights off.
So that was just a quick taster of everything that we did during the lockdown. Obviously, we couldn't show you all of it. So if you want, I'll put the links to our Facebook page and our website in the little chat box so that you can, and feel free to contact me to ask any questions. And that's us, I think.
Thank you, Molly. That was great. Chris, can you hear now?
Can hear you now, Zara.
Perfect, and you can be heard. So that is absolutely wonderful. I am going to set your timer, and you have your 5 minutes. And Molly, if I can just ask you to put yourself on mute, that would be great. Thank you. Right, so sorry, I should introduce you. I'm handing over to Chris from Well Fed, who is a Glasgow-based social enterprise. So it's one that is part of where we are. So I'll hand over to Chris to find out what they've been doing over the last few months.
Thank you, Zara. So yeah, my name's Chris Gray. I'm the Managing Director of Well Fed Scotland, and as you said, a social enterprise based in the west of Glasgow, and we focus primarily on the provision of food for those experiencing. We generally, pre-COVID, would have generated around 70 to 80% of our income through trading activities, and I suppose as soon as COVID hit, we've seen, as others have mentioned, a rapid decline to the point of probably about 90% of sales dropped in the space of a few days. We very much, using the word that was referred to earlier, pivoted on what we were doing, simply due to the enormous demand that was apparent in the city. Referrals increased over the matter of weeks up to 800%. And over the period of the last 6 months, we have provided around 350,000 ready-made meals that were all distributed to those in need across the city and beyond. Actually expanded to cover 2 other local authority areas, Western Bartonshire and Eastern Bartonshire as well. So it was an extremely busy and challenging time for us. Scaling up was something that Well Fed were working towards. So we were very much looking at how we would scale up our enterprise, and had worked for the last 12 months prior to COVID on how we would do that. So it seemed like the right thing to do for us. That there was an enormous demand, people needed our help, and we just jumped in and made it happen. I mean, that didn't come without risk. There's enormous risks that COVID posed to all social enterprises and businesses across the sector, but ultimately the risk to us of doing nothing was equally as great as putting all of our efforts into this emergency food provision. I think that we need to acknowledge it and thank, obviously, the Scottish Government for their response with the funds and programmes that they put in place to support us. We wouldn't have been able to do it ourselves. We did access some government money, and as well as that, some money from the local authority. We also done our own sort of fundraising through sort of crowdfunding activities, and received an enormous amount of donations from not just individuals, but from other local businesses, supermarket chains, and various food distribution suppliers across Scotland. So it really was an enormous team effort, and we're very much looking forward, I suppose, to how we can return to normal. We're hoping to sort of recommence our trading activities within the next 2 weeks. We've moved into much larger premises, and we're very excited about what the future will hold for us. I suppose the biggest challenge for COVID was exploring the unknown. There was not just this crisis of food shortage and various other things, but ultimately what we had was a potential virus that could cause great harm to ourselves, our staff, our volunteers, and everyone involved. And I think as an organisation, we just need to acknowledge and thank everyone who came forward. And in terms of volunteers, it's not something that we generally do is facilitate volunteers, but we had just absolutely inundated offers, and we just had to bring these people on board, and we couldn't have done it without them. So it really has been an interesting and challenging time, but we feel that WellFed done our part, and that thousands of people across Glasgow and the West benefited when they really needed that support. So,
is that you finished within your time? Are you happy?
Absolutely, Tara.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with Chris, maybe it was somebody at the start of the pandemic, and he's like, "I'm just driving a van." You can never speak to this man when he's just doing one thing. So well done, and thank you for taking the time just now. I am now going to introduce our next speaker. Let me reset my timer, Fergus, for you, because otherwise you'll only get 58 seconds. So I am pleased to introduce Fergus, who is going to be talking about Showcase the Street and some of the new funding and technology that they tapped into and their plans for the future. So over to Fergus.
Thank you.
Fergus, are you on mute?
No, I can hear you fine.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Okay. Is that okay? So here from cloudy Dundee. It's usually sunny here, but it's a bit cloudy. So Showcase the Street was set up in 2003 initially to address young people who wanted to access dance and stayed in areas that they couldn't really pay for it. Since that point, 2014, we opened a building in the centre of Dundee, which sits in the Maryfield area. Actually sits in a really difficult place, lots of drug issues, lots of poverty issues, lots of serious organised crime issues. So we opened up 3 warehouse units that had indoor football pitches, indoor dance studios, Scotland's only standalone roller hockey rink. And in 2018, we opened up a VR centre. So the VR centre is the virtual headsets that you often see. And since that point, really, it's been a journey for us. So if you know much about Dundee, we're the games capital of the world. Some of these games that you see that are good and not so good, a lot of them have come from Dundee. And we do a lot of our work with Abertay University and students there as well who are on the master's course. So what have we done? So we have a VR centre. Since 2018, we've attracted substantial amounts of money, not just to do VR, but to do projects. So one of the first things we did recently was we did our own virtual coffee shop where young people can go and work in a coffee shop at their own time virtually. It's a great thing for young people who have a nervousness about going into the normal workplace. From that, we've gone on to create a virtual work experience, and we've also done around virtual interviews as well. So all these things are some of the actual techniques that we're working on. I would have shown them here, but I didn't want to do the share screen. So where that's led us is that we closed our building on the 23rd of March. Like a lot of people, we've got a huge building, and we kind of thought, what are we going to do next? And like a lot of the speakers earlier on, we decided not to panic and actually use the resources that we've got. So we were fortunate to get the resilience funding that paid for the cash flow, And then we got Wellbeing Fund money. And what we've done is we've set up a media broadcasting channel for young people with ADHD. It's a big problem up in our areas, I'm sure it is in other areas. So we've been working with young people throughout the summer and up to the point where they went to school, and for some of them actually still whilst they're at school, creating things around VR, gaming, AR, AI, all these wonderful buzz terms. We've bought in robots that allows them to do interactive work, it's social distancing. We've done all these things, and it's been a great journey for us. And one of the things that we're looking to do now is take our experiences of VR and tech and all those things and start to work in other areas of Scotland. And what I would really encourage people to look at is, I've got a visual aid here, which is the only visual aid that I could find, which is my son's Xbox controller. And what I thought was important about that is that I was a police officer also for 30 years, and I worked a lot with young people. And one of the things I never stopped doing was listening and observing what is happening just now. And if anybody wants to listen and observe young people just now, they've either got that in their hand, or they've got a phone in their hand, or they've got an iPad in their hand. And the technology side of things is going forward. The European data just now tells us that in 2020, there are 756,000 unfulfilled tech jobs in Europe. We're at the forefront in Scotland of tech and taking things forward. We can make it fun and all the rest as well. Got you on that, so I've got my timer here as well. One of the things I also want to touch on very briefly is that we've got a really exciting project coming up down in Arbroath. And what it's going to be is the UK's first ever building built entirely from recycled building materials. It's never been done. And we're going to put it in the poorest area. And we're going to regenerate that area, not just with the renewable sector, but with the tech sector. And all those young people who would never have got within 5 feet of something will be able to engage with it, grow and learn into the two most important sectors that are going to be there in the next 20 years. So that's our little story. Hope that helps.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fergus. That's really interesting. I'm now going to, without further ado, head on to our next speaker because we want to give you time for questions at the end. And our next speaker is Deborah, who is going to be talking to us about the Just Cycle scheme, maybe a little bit about where it came from and the impact that it's had and plans for the future. So hand over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Deborah Crozier. I'm the project manager at Just Cycle, the bicycle recycling charity based in Tweedbank in the Scottish Borders. We promote sustainable and active travel, recycling and reuse, and we also salvage bicycles destined for landfill. We currently collect from 5 of the council's recycling centres, and we also accept public donations, and we receive around about 40 to 60 bikes every single week donated. And we're currently sending around 500 bikes to projects in Africa every year. So the charity was established in 2015, headed by a lady called Lynn Marshall, who works for Scottish Borders Council, and run by a small team of dedicated volunteers. I was appointed in 2018 to move the project forward as Lynn stepped down. And when I arrived, the guys were working from a tiny little unit, doing everything from one unit in Tweedbank. They were working probably 6 months of the year, so part of the time, on a pick and fix basis. So they had no stock available to buy. You came in, you picked a bike and they would fix it for you. In the last 2 years, we've managed to obtain second larger premises. So we've now got a dedicated workshop for our mechanics, which is safer for everyone. We've also got a separate cycling area so we can store our bikes. And we've got a dedicated sales office. Most of our volunteers are now qualified mechanics, 2 of whom are employed by Just Cycle. And we now work all year round. Through the winter months, we restore the bikes ready so that come summer, we've got plenty of stock available for sale and customers can come in and just buy a recycled bicycle. We ended the year on a high. In 2009, we were announced runners-up in the Scottish Borders Business Awards 2019. And then 2020 came along to burst our bubble, and we were hit by a global pandemic, as you know. And what that meant for Just Cycle was all but 2 of our volunteers were shielding. The council closed the recycling centres and we could no longer accept public donations, which created a little bit of an issue for Just Cycle. But being a social enterprise, as everybody said here, our first thought was, okay, so how do we best serve our community from this position? And what we decided to do, my husband's actually a volunteer with Just Cycle, but he's also a bus driver with border buses. And so we learned early on the impact that the reduced bus service was going to have on the borders in, you know, for key workers in a rural area. So we decided to open our sales room and we put on a free service called the Key Workers Bike Library. And that allowed key workers to come in and get access to a fully serviced bike, to loan it for as long as they needed to, because we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last, on the condition that when they weren't using it, they would return it to us so it didn't end up back in landfill. And we were able to spread the news about this quickly by collaborating with other organisations in the borders that referred key workers to us. And by the end of April, we had over 60 bikes out on loan to key workers, keeping the borders moving. And then, beginning of May, I received a call from NHS Borders, who were looking to fast track 8 doctors, first-year doctors, that were coming into the area to support the COVID effort. And they were looking for bikes as transport. And Just Cycle were able to oblige quickly. We managed to kit them out with a loan bike and helmet and chain. And the feedback we received from that was absolutely fantastic, because the doctors didn't just use those bikes to get to and from work on the front line. They were also able to use them to take advantage in their downtime of what the borders has to offer. And if you've been to the borders, you'll know it's pretty amazing. It's beautiful. Off the back of that, Just Cycle now has an agreement with NHS Borders to provide loan bikes for all of their students coming forward, all medical students. And we will also maintain and service those bikes moving forward. So even though it looked grim at the beginning and we weren't sure what was going to happen, it just goes to show that life echoes your intentions. And when you put positive energy out there, look into how you can support others, that positive energy comes back to support you. Thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to, I'd like you to join us on Just Cycle 1 on Facebook, and you can see us updating on there. Thank you very much for allowing me to share a little bit about Just Cycle, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Sharing that Facebook thing reminded me that if all of our speakers, you could just use the chat box to put your web link in any social media that you want people to follow. We've got loads of comments, loads of supportive things, and I'll ask our audience if you've got any specific questions that you want to ask. If you could put them in the chat box, just put question at the beginning and then we'll be able to find them, and we'll have a little bit of time at the end to ask, and let us know if it's for a specific speaker or if it's just a general question. We are going to move on to our final rising star, and I met Sophie maybe a year and a bit ago, and she came into the office and I was just blown away by the ambition that she had for her social enterprise. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your input, Sophie, and I've got a video to share for you. Do you want me to share that right now, or is it after you've spoken for a bit? You'll let me know when to share it.
It's the final minute. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Sophie from the Remade Network.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you today. It's really great to take part and hear from others, and to be able to share what we've achieved as a team. Remade Network is a social enterprise that works collaboratively with community groups to set up repair social enterprises. We've just launched our first 2 projects in Glasgow, the Repair Stop and our desktop distribution project. The Repair Stop offers affordable repairs of household goods, and the desktop distribution project refurbishes computers donated by Glasgow City Council and purchased by the Scottish Government in order to redistribute them to vulnerable groups across Glasgow. I'm going to share a slide, if I can, with a picture of the project. Has that worked?
So hopefully if you double click that, it'll be a bit
it's
bigger.
Quite hard to see, actually. It's a bit small, but it shows both projects at our launch. The work in Govan Hill builds on my previous experience of setting up the Remakery in Brixton in 2008. I then moved to Edinburgh and started the Edinburgh Remakery, which I left to start up in Glasgow. Remade Network has been working for the past 6 months closely with Repair Cafe Glasgow, Glasgow Tool Library and Govan Hill Bars Community Trust to develop a collaborative social enterprise repair business model, one which is increasing all our trading incomes, draws on our shared commitment to a future without waste, and means that together we can support people in Glasgow with the provision of the services and products that are most needed. We secured a contract with Glasgow City Council to refurbish their old IT kit in return for community benefits. This meant that we had a supply of IT to offer people computers and connection when they most needed it, especially when isolated during these COVID times. These devices have gone and will go to single parents, refugees, Somali and Roma groups, and families on low incomes right across the city. It's been really great to see them making a difference, and a tangible difference to people's lives, like Mitchell, aged 10, who was struggling to do his schoolwork at home. And it's also great to know that by purchasing these second-hand devices, the Scottish Government has saved money and carbon, the equivalent of over 1,000 flights from Glasgow to Amsterdam. Alongside this project, we opened up the repair stop within Govanhill Bar's Community Trustee Pen building, accessed by a COVID-proof hatch where our technicians process a steady stream of repairs, helping people keep their household objects, from blenders to laptops to headphones to jeans, for longer. And miraculously, this focus on need has also been the single thing that has helped our own business not just survive but thrive, with no emergency funding. We've pivoted our plans with the challenges of COVID to create a cheaper, more local model than a shop with an expensive rent. We grew from 1.5 staff in January to 3 in March, and we'll have 8 people in post by October. Repair creates 10 times as many jobs as recycling and offers a model for community-led regeneration. We believe that our model shows how the circular economy agenda can radically embrace social justice as well as efficiency gains, one that replaces gentrification with regeneration and really draws on the assets of local communities, creates efficiencies of scale, and leverages in targeted support at a time of very limited resources. The Brixton Project 2 was born in 2008 at the time of the financial crash, when I asked the community, could we have a centre where our elderly immigrants teach our unemployed bankers some useful skills in fixing things? Without underestimating the scale of the challenges we face, perhaps COVID will renew our focus on what we really need and what we can achieve together. I'm going to end with a short video from our launch from Glasgow City Council, who've supported our approach over the past year with both the computer contract and a social enterprise grant. We're so grateful for this support. It's been lovely to share our story with you, and I welcome your feedback and hope that you can come and visit us in Govanhill. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sophie, if you can stop sharing your screen, then I'll share your video, hopefully. And this is where I've been telling everyone how easy it is to share, and I'll be like, oh, I can't do it. Right, so I go into my today. Oh. Okay.
I work for Glasgow City Council, and I think the repair network is incredibly important because it represents real development and social enterprise initiative in the city of Glasgow. But importantly, it brings together a bunch of smaller organisations and forms a coalition to do something which is much bigger. And it directly addresses the climate challenge. It's going to impact upon digital exclusion. It's going to create jobs, and it creates social cohesion. It's a really great project by bringing all these things together, and it's very dynamic, and it's going to spread across Scotland as well.
Okay, great. Now, just before we take questions, I wanted to bring your attention to, at the top right-hand side, there should be a little red dot where it says polls. That's a poll from our organiser, and they'll be popping up throughout the day. So if you keep an eye on that and then give us that feedback live, that would be really super helpful. So thank you very much to our speakers. I hope you guys are reading the chat box. Absolutely, everyone is loving it, and I hope that makes up for the fact that we can't actually applaud you. I wanted to ask if Okay, so we've got a question from Becky Duncan. Becky, this is for you, Chris, and it's Becky asks, well, actually it's a comment first of all, incredible work feeding so many during lockdown, before and beyond. What do you need for your social enterprise to thrive? And this might be a question for all of you actually, what plans do you have for coping with another potential lockdown? Please don't say it, over winter. So Chris, if we can take it from you first, what do you need and what are your plans for another potential lockdown? And then if anybody else wants to come in on that, they can as well.
Yeah, thank you, Becky, for the question and the comment. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, we have moved to much larger premises, which means that all our overheads have quadrupled. So we need to get back into our trading pattern. We're hoping that our online trading through home delivery and takeaway service will bounce back quickly with revised new menus. We are, for the first time really, planning to actually promote the fact that we're a social enterprise through the trading platforms on Just Eat, Uber Eats, etc., and hope that maybe some social attitudes are changing in Scotland, and that's going to actually boost our sales. We just need people to come back to using us. We unfortunately missed out on the Eat Out to Help Out scheme because that just ended as we are due to open up, but we're hoping that people will come back. We've made the place really quirky, it's spacious, it's safe. We've got a fantastic outdoor space, so we're hoping that will make a difference. In terms of our plans, if there was a second lockdown, it's a terrifying thought that if we had to go into closing that building down for a long period, we would still hope that we'd be able to do the home delivery service, and that would increase. We're getting into the busiest period for takeaway and home delivery, so it tends really to late September through to sort of March is actually the key trading time for that. We're hoping that would still be able to do that and sell through there. Catering was another main aspect of our income, which is it's non-existent at this point in time. There are no gatherings where anyone requires it. There's a lot of optimism, but there's also a lot of fingers crossed that we don't go into a real strict lockdown period again. But we're just going to continue to remain fluid and hope that we can react as things change.
Absolutely, it's absolutely terrifying. I think for me, because you know what's going to be involved. The first time when it was locked down, you're just kind of like, oh, we've never done this, we don't know what this means. And now the thought of it is absolutely horrendous. So does anybody else have any comments on what a second winter lockdown might mean, and if you've started any contingency planning around that, or if the fact, I guess some of you who've moved to digital, it might not be an impact. Does anyone want to come in, or will we move on to the next question? Okay, so we have a question for Deborah. Deborah, this question is from Michael Cook. One of the sessions earlier in the day, we talked about how there have been some positive changes through lockdown, and one of those is active travel, more people getting on their bikes. How do you think that we can ensure that's locked in as people go back to normal, so people continue with the active travel with cycling and things? And do you feel that the Scottish Government is doing more, or would you have an ask around that?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Michael. There's lots happening at the minute. It's really positive, especially in the borders. There's lots of groups coming together. So we've got Sustainable Selkirk, we've got Green and Melrose. There's a project in Stow Community Project, and everybody's come together and everybody's supporting. This increase in. We've certainly seen a massive increase in cycling, and people have stepped up to the mark. So there's been money made available from Scottish Government. Money is available through Cycling UK and Cycling Scotland, and so we're using that money for repairs for people, and also for safer cycling routes, which is the main thing. I think that's the feedback we get from people in the borders, is we've asked what keeps you cycling. So of those bikes that we've had out on loan, we did ask that they return them so they didn't end up in landfill, but the majority of them have actually been bought, so people are hanging onto the bikes with the intention of active travel. And so safer cycling routes for us is definitely the way forward. But I think it's definitely positive. It's moving forward, yeah.
Sophie, there's a question coming from you from Ian Mitchell. I think you've answered it in the chat box, but it would be useful if we could just go over that. What is the one or two most useful pieces of support that a public body could provide you to assist you with your growth?
I think that I mean, the first thing is a kind of starting point of trust that local organisations can deliver. So the contract for computers in Glasgow is important to us. The second thing is looking at kind of preventative spend models around support, whether that's funding or support in kind for other assets. I think taking that approach can really deliver results and really maybe showing kind of understanding that a social enterprise model, our business model, does ask for some funding up front, but it tapers off over time. And I think that's what, you know, if public bodies can see the potential of social enterprise to deliver, they'll maybe be less cautious about making those kind of investments.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophie. I have a question for Fergus. This is from David Cook. How can we fight? You know, social enterprise is not actually very good at technology usually. It's not something that we have particularly been at the forefront of. So that was my comment, not David's, by the way. David's question is, how can we find ways to bring new innovative technologies into community ownership? Have you got a take on that?
Yeah, I think it's like everything. It's raising people's aspiration levels, I think, to start with, about what we can and can't do. I mean, about a year and a half ago, probably the most I knew about tech was my phone and my iPad and my son's continuous use of FIFA. So I think what I've done is I've probably looked outside where I am. We've been fortunate we have Abertay Uni on our doorstep that's shown us a great way to take that forward. But the tech industry is like a lot of industries. It's quite a niche market, and sometimes it's quite a snobby market as well, if that makes sense. So actually to try and get a foot in the door, Abertay have been great with us. We've been able to utilise students. We got quite a lot of funding early on, and we've considered to get quite a lot of funding to employ staff, to employ people that have an awareness of it. And then what they do is they start to embrace young people. So I think the way we're going to do this is we're going to embrace youngsters, and we're going to start to teach them not just about the use of tech across all aspects of their life. And don't get me wrong, I would rather do the face-to-face stuff any day of the week. But I think if we understand that tech can be used for so many things, so we've used it for people with disability, we've used it for people with ADHD and autism, we've used it to tackle social issues. One of the simplest ways to look at it is when you put a VR headset on your head. Imagine Johnny, who stays in the street, who's never been past the end of his street, and can put a VR headset on his head and suddenly be in the middle of a country that he would never ever be in. We've just raised Johnny's aspiration to go and do something different, to walk outside that street and understand that the world's a much bigger place. And I think if you've never worked in poverty and that real difficult place where a lot of us do work, you never understand that people never get the opportunity to raise their aspirations. So the work that Molly's doing and all the others are doing with young people is really important.
Absolutely. And actually, Molly, our last question is for you. Having moved your activities online, this is from Sue. Having moved your activities online during lockdown, how will that change what you do in the future?
Had quite a lot of discussions, because usually we do, group activities or individual support in person, and especially for the individual support that we did, some of it actually really, really worked online for the children and the families that we worked with. So one of the children we worked with had 2 half-an-hour calls a day, one in the afternoon, one in the evening. And hearing back from their parent, just having half an hour, usually, our in-person support sessions would take a lot longer. Having half an hour just for her to have to herself, to go and do something like housework, have a cup of tea, she said that really helped her well-being. So it made us think, actually, this could be something potentially that we could put in place that actually would help people in the long run, to give them just, that time to themselves, a little bit of relief in the middle of the day or in the evening when we wouldn't usually do support. But online sort of group activities, doing it over Zoom was really difficult with a bunch of children. You can imagine what it's like with adults, but with children it was very difficult to sort of get points across. So doing things online, like the videos and stuff, were really great because the community got to see what we were doing as well as the kids. But we are quite excited to get back into more in-person group activities as well. So kind of a balance, yeah.
The best of both, isn't it? I've been doing some work in the mental health sphere recently, and it's interesting because a lot of young people have been asking for their mental health support to be delivered digitally, or, you know, oftentimes they've got to go for their appointments between 9 to 5 on a Monday to Friday, which doesn't work for them because they're in school. And during, and all the adults were saying, no, we can't do it online, we can't do it online. And over the last 6 months, they've been able to do it online, and they're delivering help to the children, and it's actually cutting waiting lists in a way that wouldn't have been envisaged before. So the comments are absolutely inspiring. Thank you, all of you, for taking the time to prepare for your presentations, for sticking to time. And I'm sure there'll be people who want to catch up with you individually. Check through the chat, there's lots of links in there. And if you do want to catch up with any of our panelists here, click on the People tab, you can find their name, and you can either invite them to a video chat, you can check their profile, which should have their email addresses on, or you can just ping them a message. We are going into a comfort break now, after which we'll be welcoming Catherine Trebeck and Indy Johar for our second keynote speech, and that is at 11:05. I can't tell you where the nearest toilets are, but I can promise you that you won't, that you'll get a cup of tea made exactly how you like it. I've learned from experience that you probably should take 5 to 10 minutes away from your computer right now, go and stretch your legs, do some star jumps, whatever you need to. Please don't just sit, because it's going to be a long day. Stand up, walk around. But we also have our exhibition space and our networking space. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a little menu there. If you click into exhibition, either before you make your cup of tea or afterwards, we've got our sponsors there. We've got some people there who are waiting to help you and tell you about the services and the products they have that can help you as social enterprises or as people who are supporting social enterprises. And you can also see our help desk if you need any help with that. And in the networking bit, that's where you can find everybody else. I shall see you here just about a minute before, so at 11:04, if you guys could come back. It would be really great to see as many of you as possible. And thanks once again to our wonderful rising stars, and a round of applause from me and from everybody sitting in their homes. Okay, so rising stars, you can all click leave. Everybody else go into the exhibition space, and we'll see you in 20 minutes. Thank you.